And we're back. This is 3.10 diffusion. All right. So what happens if you put a few drops of food coloring in water? Over time, the molecules of color spread out through the rest of the water. When the molecules are evenly spread throughout the space, the water will become an even color. This process of molecules moving from an area where there are lots of molecules to an area where there are fewer molecules is known as diffusion. Diffusion, small molecules can pass through the plasma membrane through a process called diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of molecules from an area where there's a higher concentration, larger amount, of the substance to an area where there is a lower concentration, or a lower amount, of the substance. The amount of a substance in relation to the total volume of the concentration. During diffusion, molecules are said to flow down their concentration gradient, flowing from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Molecules flowing down a concentration gradient is a natural process and does not require energy. Diffusion can occur across a semi-permeable membrane, such as a cell membrane. As long as the concentration gradient exists, molecules will continue to flow in this manner until equilibrium is reached. At equilibrium, there is no longer an area of high concentration or low concentration, and molecules flow equally in both directions across the semi-permeable membrane. At equilibrium, equal amounts of a molecule are entering and leaving the cell. Here's the diagram. So time is going from left to right. It's increasing as you move. We have the lipid bilayer here in the middle, and we have the extracellular, or the outside the cell space, and the intracellular, or the inside the cell space. And the caption reads, diffusion is the movement of the substance from an area of a higher amount toward an area of lower amount. A concentration gradient initially exists across the cell membrane. Equilibrium is reached when there is an equal amount of substance on both sides of the membrane. So we start off in the diagram with nowhere near equilibrium. We start moving towards equilibrium in the middle of the diagram, and at the end of it, we've reached equilibrium with particles moving in and out equally. Osmosis. The diffusion of water across a membrane because of a difference in concentration is called osmosis. Let's explore three different situations and analyze the flow of water. A hypotonic solution means the environment outside the cell has a lower concentration of dissolved material than the inside of the cell. If a cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, water will move into the cell. This causes the cell to swell and may even burst. A hypertonic solution means the environment outside the cell has more dissolved material than inside the cell. If a cell is placed in a hypertonic solution, water will leave the cell. This will cause the cell to shrink and shrivel. Number 3, an isotonic solution is a solution in which the amount of dissolved material is equal both inside and outside the cell. Water still flows in both directions, but an equal amount enters and leaves the cell. Applications of osmosis. How do marine animals keep their cells from shrinking? How do you keep the blood cells from bursting? Both of these questions have to do with the cell membrane and osmosis. Marine animals live in salt water, which is hypertonic. There is more salt in the water than in their cells. To prevent losing too much water from their bodies, these animals intake large quantities of salt water and then secrete the excess salt. Red blood cells can keep from bursting or shriveling if put in a solution that is isotonic to the blood cells. If the blood cells were put in pure water, the solution would be hypotonic to the blood cells. So water would enter the blood cells and they would swell and burst below, in the figure below. Right? 3.10 summary. Diffusion is the movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. The diffusion of water across a membrane because of a difference in concentration is called osmosis. And then you're going to do the review questions. Number 1, describe the process of diffusion. Number 2, define osmosis. Number 3, sorry for the dog. If a plant cell is placed in a solution and the cell shrivels up, what type of solution was it placed in? How do you know? So number 1 and number 2 are pretty much straight from the text. Number 3, you're going to have to think and apply what you read. Okay? Don't just Google it and try to answer it. Actually read and think about it. All right. I'll see you in the next section.